Hello, BookTube. I've got some mail for you on a beautiful, beautiful Tuesday afternoon. The weather during the weekend got iniquitous. It got warmer and warmer and more humid until finally it was just at a breaking point, and then it broke. A rainstorm swept through here last night. At one point, a pounding downpour, and then a gentler rain on and off all night long. And by morning, the entire front had changed, and the humidity was down. The air was crisp and clean. There was no hint of rain. There was no hint of real heat. It might actually get chilly at night for the next couple of days before the heat starts going up again. And I have a bunch of mail that was out on the front porch. I was out on the front porch anyway with my camera to check on my newest resident, which is a robin. Robins have set up a nest and are currently sitting eggs in that nest right next to the porch. And they are stalwart, brave little birds. They don't flee at the sign of trouble, so I get to get up close and look at them. I don't know how to talk to birds at all, but I'm hoping that I can convey that I am no threat, that I'm no danger at all. I'm hoping that they're also smart enough to see that my sparrows and my starlings are not afraid of me. So maybe they don't need to be either. Maybe they won't get any communal cues from anybody else. But I'm able to watch, and it's been fascinating, just fascinating. And I was out there earlier today when I found a bunch of mail. We have, let's see, a periodical and a bunch of packages, including a couple of boxes. And the periodical is Harpers, the new Harpers Magazine about the permanent pandemic. Here, let me get the exact attributions here. The permanent pandemic is the subtitle. The question in the table of contents is, will COVID controls keep controlling us? And the piece is by Justin E.H. Smith, and it's fantastic. Just fantastic. I don't know if it's the excerpt from a coming book or a book that's already out. I'm definitely going to research it because it was terrific. Just terrific. All sorts of ramifications of the social controls that governments have imposed on their people in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and what those controls really mean, only without any of the febrile conspiracy theory nonsense that usually attends the asking of those questions. Instead, it didn't have any of that. It was just beautifully done. That was the high point of this issue. There was also a low point. Let's get the perpetrator. Kent Russell is the writer, and the article is called Sorcerers Apprentice, in which the main character is disenchanted with the world, and so he goes looking for another world. I want to read you just one. It infuriated me, absolutely infuriated me, and it infuriated me, and it's also a harbinger of a horrifying world to come. Just horrifying. A world that I think we're probably already mostly in. He is talking about a man named King, who claims to be a sorcerer, claims to be able to summon demons, claims there's nothing metaphorical about his talents, that he can actually summon physical demons from a netherworld that have magical powers and that he can send to do magical tasks. The author, Russell, here decides that he wants to try and talk to this guy, wants to interview him. But first he encounters him through his blog. And this is part of what he writes that just had me screaming at the page. When I first came across King's blog late one summer night in 2019, I felt stunned and exhilarated, as though I'd been electrified by a bolt from the blue. King's writing shocked me out of a despondency that was not too extraordinary, I don't think. At the time, I was finding myself bereft of a sense of purpose, as well as a horizon to look forward to. I was despairing over the death of civility, the collapse of public trust, and the obliteration of consensus reality. Existence had been whittled down to a dumb play of atoms and a tribalistic will to power. It was as if malevolent entities had been loosed upon the world to make sure the center did not hold. But what if? I wondered. What if you actually could show the world a demon? Not a symbol or a conceit, but a living, malign intelligence that transcends the material plane and reacquaints us with our first language, fear. Wouldn't that change everything? Wouldn't it free us to know it's all true? This is of a piece with the absolute raving lunacy of, for instance, vaccine denialism, but also uh, new left Twitter checkmark nonsense like two-spirit, people who identify as two spirits, and also all kinds of revanchist ideas about the four humors or ghosts and goblins or whatever. It is a manifestation of the rot that happens when you extend personal courtesy to other people too far. Where I want to be courteous to you, so not only am I going to respect your worldview, but I'm not going to challenge your worldview when it is factually wrong. I'm still not going to do that because I don't want to be accused of a hate crime. There are no demons. In the course of the article, this king person never produces one. He claims that he can, but he never does. He always says the time isn't right. And yet, at the end of the article, is the author convinced the guy's a charlatan? No. He's convinced that he himself has to try harder. I'm hoping that the whole thing is irony, but I think I know better than that in 2022. I'm pretty sure that it was meant sincerely. And it is a sign of rot. I know two people teaching in America at two very different levels of academia who have both been confronted by students who believe in spirits. And when I say confronted, the teacher was talking about particle physics and preparing students to take a test on that subject so that they will know the subject according to the latest knowledge that will help them in their search for a job. And in one of these cases, a student approached the teacher and said, well, I don't believe in your worldview. I'm not going to do the calculations for this test because I don't believe in your worldview. I believe these forces are personal, and I think calculating them would offend them. And if you don't agree to that, if you say, okay, then you fail, I'll have 1,000 students picketing outside your home in 10 hours. I'll have you drummed out of this university. They'll cancel your tenure. I insist that this thing that is demonstrably wrong is demonstrably a delusion. I don't care how old it is. Produce it, is what I say. If a student like that sits, and the teacher, of course, was frozen solid. There was nothing that he could do. He knows perfectly well how tenuous his employment is and how complete the absence of backups are. But in a situation like that on myself, I would say to the student, well, you think that there are magical beings involved in these forces that we're studying, these gluons and muons and whatnot. Produce one for me. I can demonstrate beyond any shadow of a doubt that these particles exist. That research has been duplicated 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, in 1,000,000 different cultures in the last 60 years. I can demonstrate that beyond any doubt whatsoever. You are giving me an alternative model. Demonstrate it to me. And of course, that would drive the person crazy, as you can see whenever you encounter anyone. The articles like that help people to legitimize the fact that so many people you meet in any given day are literally living in their own reality, where the world is flat, for instance, where if you ask them the simple cognitive test question, "Who's president of the United States?" they'll give you the wrong answer, and they'll believe it. They won't say, because of this, that, and the other thing. They'll say, no, it is literally true. He's actually running the government. The wrong guy is running the government. I actually believe that. Articles like that really dust my doilies. So we'll move on from there to the books. And the first one is a little bit of an apology on my part because it was opened off camera. All the others weren't, but this one was. This is by James Suskind, and it is The Digital Republic on Freedom and Democracy in the 21st century. Now, ordinarily, you would want to run screaming from any book that starts a description of itself with "on." You would want to run. If an author says "on beauty," on the imponderables of life, on the nature of a sunset, usually you'd want to run. That means that you're in the presence of usually a dude bro stem winder, someone who's going to waste your time. But I don't know anything about this book, so let's see what we have here. The social power of digital technology is growing by the day. Code written by developers is used to decide whether we get a loan, whether our resumes get considered, or even whether we will be fired from our job. Data collected by tech firms allows strangers to know us in ways we might not even know ourselves. These are all truisms so far, but they're building up to something, I assume. Our perceptions of ourselves and each other are shaped and molded by systems that organize the world's information. The digital is political. This book is a definitive guide to one of the most urgent political questions of our time by one of the great public intellectual rock stars of our time, according to the Evening Standard. Don't say I didn't warn you. The author, an award-winning author of best-selling book Future Politics, shows how freedom and democracy can survive and flourish in a world transformed by digital technology. Okay, I read Future Politics and I really liked it. So maybe I'm going to like this thing. Let's see here. While policymakers around the world are hardly pulling together legislation to rein in technology, the author, a practicing barrister, historian, and political theorist, argues that what is needed is more fundamental. Quote, "We will have to change the way we think about technology, ourselves, and each other." Drawing from a long tradition of Republican thought, that's Republican with a small r, from ancient Greece and Rome to the framers of the U.S. Constitution, Susskind lays out a vision of a digital republic governed by 4 basic principles. Okay, let's see what they are. The laws must preserve the basic institutions necessary for a free society, such as a functioning democratic and judicial system. So that ship has sailed. Number 2, the law should reduce the unaccountable power of those who design and control digital technology, and keep that power to a minimum. That ship has also sailed, at least in America. Let's see. Number 3 is the law should ensure, as far as possible, that powerful technologies reflect the moral and civic values of the people who live under their power. Okay. All right. Well, what did I say about living in alternate realities? And what's the 4th one? Everybody gets candy? The law should restrain government too, and regulation should always be designed in a way that involves as little state intrusion as possible. Okay, well, this doesn't come out for a while. Yeah, this doesn't come out until July, so I don't have to deal with it until then. But I wanted to show it to you because it probably interests a lot of you. Probably a lot of you read Future Politics, maybe at my behest. Then we'll move on to the packages that we'll open together. And we'll see if you have a Steve book. A squealer would be nice. One of the boxes is enormous, so that could be. We could end on a bang. So what is this? Oh, all right. The first one is very close to a Steve squealer. This is by Catherine Rundell, and it is Super Infinite, The Transformations of John Donne. Let's see here. This is not a conventional biography. It's a highly engaging and spirited feat of imagination that breathes new life into the genre. Genre didn't need new life, thanks. It is also an act of evangelism, and perhaps more importantly, a celebration of the wonder and astonishment of being alive. Okay, you're going to give Donne a word in edgewise? Or no? Donne was an English writer and clergyman, yet he... John Donne was an English writer and clergyman. Poet? No, he was an English writer and clergyman. I think he wrote science fiction. Let's see here. Yet he was incapable of being just one thing. He was also a poet, lover, essayist, lawyer, pirate, recusant, preacher, satirist, politician, courtier, chaplain to the king, and the dean of the finest cathedral in London. Blessed with a never-ending imagination, he was a pure original, forever reinventing himself. He was also a complete mystery. No diary entries, first-hand accounts, or manuscript drafts of his poems remain. What does exist, lovingly compiled and analyzed by our author, is miraculous. We agree on that. Donne wanted to create a language that could reach beyond language itself. Did he now? Okay. Okay. Great. A new book on Donne and his poetry. That's fantastic. So this comes out in early September. It's another one. The subject appeals to me just like Digital Republic, but I'm not going to get to anything that far away this soon. Not when I've got a whole summer of books to read. This next one is a priority mail envelope. Did it possibly come from one of you? It shouldn't. Those of you who are new to the channel, we have a rule on this channel. Rule number 1, do not send Steve a book. Do not do it. No, this is from Basic Books. They just popped it in a priority mail envelope. Okay. All right, this comes out in September as well. It obviously is not destined for me. This is by Jacob Saul, and it's called Free Market, The History of an Idea. When most of us talk about the free market, we are talking about an economic system built around low taxes, free from government intervention. We think of a system that defines every aspect of modern commerce in America today, but after 2 government bailouts of the U.S. economy in less than 20 years, free market ideology is due for serious reappraisal. Noam Chomsky would have said 50 years ago that there's no such thing, that it's a pure illusion. It's a state economy. That's what he would have said. For nearly 2,000 years, economic philosophers believed that stoic morals and a strong economically strategic state were necessary to maintaining a self-perpetuating free market. It was only in the mid-20th century that economists began insisting that the market functioned without any state involvement. The modern ideal of orthodox free market thought has not been realized. Do tell. This book tells the story of how free market thought evolved, why it is in crisis today, and why a return to its past helps us understand the successes and failures of the most powerful idea in economics. Okay, well, this obviously is a David Murphy book, so I will get it into his hands at the earliest opportunity. Obviously, that does not call to Steve, since I wouldn't understand 2 consecutive pages of it. Feels like a bit of a letdown after John Donne. Oh, great. Oh, fantastic. All right. This is an early June release, so this is a finished copy for June. Far more apropos, far more oh my. Oh, how wonderful. This is the finished copy of Hotbed by Joanna Scutts. Deep in the heart of New York City, nearly a decade before the 19th Amendment granted women the right to vote, a revolution began. Some of the most outspoken and ambitious female figures of the time, from artists and journalists to lawyers, social workers, and scientists, gathered in Greenwich Village for the first meeting of Heterodoxy, a collective of visionary women whose imagination created not only a community, but a movement for gender equality. In this book, Joanna Scutts employs her training as a historian and literary critic to rescue the stories of those women and their extraordinary friendships. Even though Heterodoxy members kept no written records of their secret meetings, she navigates the wealth of information they left behind. Memoirs, plays, poems, novels, lectures, interviews, and even film appearances, to compose a probing history of feminism's origins from the words of some of its earliest pioneers. Well, this is great. This comes out in early June. I have the advanced copy. I haven't got to it yet, which is pretty shameful considering that Joanna Scutts wrote for Open Letters Monthly quite a bit, and we were always incredibly happy to have her. so I will get to that right away. That's an early June release. Great. Fantastic. Then we have the boxes. One is small, and one is huge and heavy. I do not know of any single release that is heavy enough for the second one. First one is just the size of a book, so that shouldn't be a problem. Invoice here that we don't necessarily want. We don't necessarily want it in there. Oh no, you've got to be kidding me. Oh, okay, this is a November release. It's also a David Murphy book. This is not for me. This is by Glory M. Liu, and it's called Adam Smith's America: How a Scottish Philosopher Became an Icon of American Capitalism. That's 2 David Murphy books practically in a row. Adam Smith's America. What do we have here? I don't have a sheet for this, but there'll be a description inside the book. Yes, there we go. So this comes out in November. That's one of the latest dates that I have. Originally published in 1776, Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations was lauded by America's founders as a landmark work of Enlightenment thinking about national wealth, statecraft, and moral virtue. Today, Smith is one of the most influential icons of economic thought in America. The author of this book traces how generations of Americans have read, reinterpreted, and weaponized Smith's ideas, revealing how his popular image as a champion of American-style capitalism and free market is a historical invention, not a reality. So we're once again dealing with the invisible hand of the free market, and only this time going straight to the source. How fascinating. Well, this, unlike the other one, this is something that I might read and maybe understand. I've read The Wealth of Nations and really enjoy it. So, but it still belongs to David Murphy, not me. And then we have the box, a big, heavy thing that, like I say, I find it hard to believe this is just one book. The only thing I can think of that's coming out that's this size all by itself is Gods of Deception, that big historical novel that we saw that's well over 1,000 pages. But even that is too big for this. Let's see what we have here. This is almost certainly more than one book. Oh my. Oh, the people at Princeton University Press deserve a box of Mega Stuff Oreos for having me in mind. Oh my. Okay. All right. This is the complete works of W.H. Auden, Volume 1 and Volume 2 from Princeton. Look at these things. Incredible. Oh my. Incredible. I have the electronic advanced copies of these that I have been reading and loving. These are edited by Edward Mendelsohn, who does he's done a great deal of fantastic writing about Auden. And they come at the perfect time for me because, as some of you know, if you watch this channel, for a couple of years now, I have been making slow, steady rereading through that old collected poems of W.H. Auden, the old sort of off-white hardcover dust jacket that a lot of you will recognize from your bookstores from ye olden days. I got a copy of that at the Brattle, and it was on the shelf, and I had a mixed opinion of Auden, not really all that much of a fanboy, and then I started working my way through that volume. Off stage, we never did a read-along, I've never done anything like that with that volume, slowly and meditatively, and it really worked. It really did. And I also I've been scooping up Auden criticism and also Auden biographies at the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston whenever they occurred. And a couple of the really good ones are by this editor. And now I have this. Now I am in the perfect position to get these. How fantastic. I wonder if the pub sheet tells me how many volumes this is going to be. Volume 1 goes from 1927 to 1939. Volume 2 goes from 1940 to 1973. And didn't Auden die in 73? Or in the early 70s? I wonder if the complete works of Auden, Volume 1 and Volume 2 will be the poetry. Maybe the others will be, if there's a volume like this for his essays. Oh my. Anyway, let's see what we have here. W.H. Auden is one of the greatest poets of the 20th century. I would have balked at that before that reread. Now I agree completely. And his reputation has only grown since his death. Published on the 100th anniversary of the year in which he began to write poetry, this is the first 2 volumes of the first complete edition of Auden's poetry. Okay, so what does that mean? If the second volume goes up to 1973, how can there possibly be a third volume of poetry? Maybe fragments or whatnot. Edited, introduced, and annotated by renowned Auden scholar Edward Mendelsohn, this definitive edition includes all the poems Auden wrote for publication in their original text and all his later revised versions, as well as poems and songs he never published, some of them printed here for the first time. Okay. Well, if that's true, then there can't be anything left for another volume. So this is the first of the 2 volumes of the complete edition. Okay, so the 2 volumes here are the complete Auden poetry. And then maybe, since it says the complete works, maybe the series will go on to include things that aren't poetry. The main text presents the poems in their original published versions. The notes include the extensive revisions that he made to his poems over the years of his career and provide explanations of obscure references. Okay, all right, well, each of these volumes is expensive. You probably knew that ahead of time. Yes, each of these volumes is $60. But they are as definitive as you're going to get for an edition of Auden's poetry. Let's take a look at what they look like. They have each volume has a long, wonderful introduction that are incredible. They're just amazingly good. So what is this going to do? Okay, so oh wow, all right. Well, that's a conscious decision then. So what you're getting in the book itself is the poetry. Notice no editorial interference. You're getting poetry, just poem after poem after poem. And then when you go to the back of the book, it's enormous amounts of elaboration. So this is going to be one of those books, I'm sure you've seen some of these, one of these scholarly works where you've got to have 2 bookmarks going. got to have one for where you are in the progress of the text and one for where you are in the progress of the notes. You just have to have two bookmarks at the same time. Otherwise, you're going to ruin the thing by flipping back and forth 1,000 times every time you read a poem. That's incredible. This is a pretty good example of a thing that I think probably reads better in a print book than in an ebook. In very large part because of that bouncing back and forth between the notes and the poems. So I'm very, very happy to have these. Fantastic. It was so long that I was starting to think I just wasn't going to get the finished copies, that I would just have to do with the electronic copies, but no. Oh my. Okay. Well, all right. So poetry heavy. This mail haul is split between poetry and the Counting House. So we have new Princeton edition of the complete works of W.H. Auden. The first two volumes are all the poetry in all the variations. What will the other volumes be? All the prefaces, all the occasional work, my bailiwick. I have those, but I'd love to have them carefully annotated by the guy who knows the author best. Then we have Adam Smith's America, and also, along the same lines, the history of the free market. We have Joe Scott's Hotbed on the origins of modern American feminism. We have Super Infinite, a book about John Donne. And we have The Digital Republic. What does it mean for these digital sources to be our new town square, our new bulletin board, our new news agency? What does it mean? And the vexed question of how regulated should they be by the government? Which sounds really good when your guy's in the government. Doesn't sound so good when they're not. All fascinating. Quite a few of these are too far away for me to consider. But the Auden are not. the Auden have bumped everything. Even Joe Scott's very sorry. I'm sure she would agree. They've bumped pretty much everything because I have been longing, the physical copies of these things, I have been longing to make them mine, and that is fantastic. Oh my. So I'm going to wrap up this video and commence doing exactly that. But I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.